do you think that permaculture could potentially provide one of the bridges around reconciliation? Like it's a big thing in Canada right now, where there's work being done to try and reconcile what's happened in the past and figure out how we all kind of walk together going forward. And like a lot of the stuff that I hear around there, I mean, it's acknowledgement, but there isn't a lot of conversation around what happens afterwards. It's like, yeah, we did all these really bad things in the past, but sometimes it comes across a little bit as disingenuous, for me anyways, because I always want to put my hand up after these acknowledgements and say, like, what happens afterwards? Like, what are we going to do? Like, are we just going to continue to be mad and upset and sad about what? And I just, like, it makes me feel really uncomfortable, to even say these things sometimes, because I don't know. I'm not sure, probably digging myself a hole right now, but listening to you talk about like people showing up from the West Coast to come and help what you guys are doing, and finding that like kind of common ground. I wonder if there's maybe like some seeds of inspiration there. I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely feel so. And that's just my own perspective, and everybody has a unique perspective. But particularly this year, we've had a lot more participants from Standing Rock really eager to learn design practices and grow more food. And so, yeah, I feel like any chance that permaculture can open up opportunity for the Indigenous people is definitely a step towards reconciliation. It's not going to make things perfect, but the more that we create a habitat for their children to thrive into, that isn't just, yeah, because we learn differently. Like Indigenous people learn differently than regular school systems, and that's why it's important for us to have this space where students can use their bodies and engage to build their mind through physical activities and not just sitting still, because a lot of us have that ability to grow through alternative ways. And so I think you're right on target with that. And it's hard for me to say what the easy solution is, but one thing that came to mind was just, getting back to that, like local legislation too, is like, how can you talk to your community members or the people who are in control over decision making? Is like, we're still not listening to these people. We act like we are, or we're ignoring some of the things that are really important. And so we find this is important too. And the more seeds that are activating, it can transition government spaces across the globe in that way. It's like, as long as we're making those conversations in our local community first and opening up each other's minds to being like, well, that's wrong, but how can we make it right again through healthy practices, communication, honoring their struggle, and prioritizing the environmental regeneration in what ways they see fit, guided by the Indigenous people locally,
Yeah. There's an African word, Ubuntu. Have you heard of that? Yeah.
This is kind of along the same lines that you alluded to, the fact that sometimes it's easier to get support from outsiders more than from inside the community. And I tried to find I think it was a TED Talk that I saw several years ago, and it was just an incredible presentation this guy gave. I think it might have been pulled down because it was so just visceral and damning. You might know the one I'm talking about. It was a gentleman who had lived, I think it was on within the Standing Rock Reservation for several years, and just experienced what the people there had been living through. And he kind of shared his experience. And one of the things he talked about was like the 5 or 6 stages of genocide. And the fifth, and like basically it started with more kind of overt, just outright killing people, then destroying their habitats, then indoctrinating their children. But then the final stage was sorry, the final stage was when the oppressors took their hands off their victims and said, "My God, look at what these people are doing to themselves."
My heart's with you. I know it's hard. It was hard for me to do my whole presentation because a lot of times I do want to cry because, yeah, you know that when people's spirits broken, then they look different, and that doesn't mean that they're wrong. And so that is a lot of what I see, is that it's hard to have hope when there's so much pain, and how do we heal that pain without inflicting it on each other, and how do we transform our pain into something beautiful? Yeah. I think about that all the time because like there's a park right across from where my grandma lives here, and it is the same stuff from 30 years ago, but my kid wants to go there 2 to 3 times a day. And as soon as we get there, I mean, every day is different. Earth Day, we got there and the youth shattered a bottle of alcohol. And so there's broken glass, and you want to get mad and be like, what's wrong with these kids? But then you're like, what's wrong with their parents? And then you're like, wait, it's not their parents. It's actually society. And then you're like, wait, nobody's at fault. Like, it's just this big web and of acceptance. And so basically, you know, we just picked it up, and then when the next day we came back, and there's only 3 swings at this park, we came back the next day and 2 of the swings were chain linked, broke, like they used the they were cut. And I was just like, again, why can't we have good things? And so then I'm just like, well, how can I use this as opportunity? And so that's where I'm like, well, maybe hosting more workshops here and making people, like doing seed starting workshops, anything, just being like, hey, whoever wants to show up, let's do something, rather than creating it a space where I'm like, don't go over there, that's where the bad kids go, because that's how I want to feel. But how can we make our community spaces invigorating and reactivating the village that was lost and drowned in the river? Like, how can we make us feel like we're in a village and in community and not separate from each other anymore?
And so, I mean, like, just along that same vein, like my question was, is do you feel like we're kind of over the hill, and that the work to do reconciliation is working, in that within, you know, because of the intergenerational trauma that's like is, you know, responsible for all this stuff, like you said, like there's really no individual who's alive today that's to blame anymore. Do you feel like the work of intergenerational healing is starting? Are you seeing improvements now, or
Definitely, especially through the camp. Like, it was interesting how much the water protector camp activated, but then also it felt like once the police raided the camp and sent everyone home, then the Standing Rock people were just like, well, where's all the help at? Like, and I feel like, I don't know to really say, because I'm only here part-time, but I feel like that also is like broke spirits in different ways, where we felt like things were going to change, and then everyone left and they put the pipeline in anyway. And so we still feel threatened, and we almost feel like, well, what was the point? But then we also remember, it's like, oh, it wasn't just about us. It really was a global activation, and a lot of people started diving into you know, what was going on in their local communities, in the environmental justice ways. And so I feel like it seeded our social justice movements in different ways, even if it didn't stay here. But then also the projects like the school and the clinic and these other organizations, we still hold a lot of what was offered to us in the camp. And so even though it hasn't been activated yet, we've developed a group of mostly women who are making decisions around how we can move these projects forward. And so the Miniwichoni Clinic and Farm, which I think you guys shared the link potentially, they also were working on making a mobile clinic this year. And so we're activating contractors to convert like a school bus to something that can be accessible to all 8 districts. And then in each 8 district, our goal is to help host community gardens and then pop up workshops that aren't only focused in nutrition and good health, but also like prenatal and postpartum care through child rearing ages too. So that one of my perspectives as an environmental scientist, even, I've noticed that it's harder to make people want to change, and if they don't care about themselves too. That's where I was just like, nobody wants to recycle. Nobody cares about that stuff because they're caring about their lives are more complex, or their focus is different. And I can't blame people for that, but I have to meet people where they are at and realize that it all kind of starts with birth and where we came into the world and how we relate to the world outside. And if our birth spaces are safe and nurturing and not in a space where we're scared, then, because this is a whole side topic, but only a few families are activating home birth practices on Standing Rock, and generally our children are born off the reservation at scheduled inductions at the doctor's convenience. And so that is shifting how we're coming into this world too. And as our friend, I don't know which one of you is Rob and Dakota, but how you mentioned,
this is Rob.
Okay, Rob, how Rob mentioned that, you really got to start from, our reconciliation starts from the beginning. And that's like the first part of our interaction is with Earth. Sorry, I kind of got distracted when I realized I was like, wait, I don't know who's who. But yeah, so I really, I believe that creating safe and nurturing spaces for children to come in shifts the dynamic of the families completely. And that healing in turn, like when families feel like they have access to nourishing food, because I was actually pregnant with my child during the water protector camp, and I was like 7 months pregnant then, and I chose to relocate across the country because I didn't want to give birth in a hospital at the doctor's convenience in February or at camp when it was being raided by the police. And so I moved from the Dakotas to Oregon to people that I didn't know at all in order to feel like I could have a safe and nurtured birth space. And so a lot of that has to do with our food and our access to good food. And so all in all, permaculture, we need to grow more.
Absolutely. I just, one that really really stands out in this conversation is just your hope and enthusiasm, and I feel the true essence behind what I hope is behind the reconciliation movement, which is reconciliation and then working towards a better future and
regeneration.
And regeneration. But I think one of the things that Rob was kind of alluding to, and that concerns me also, is that there are aspects within kind of the social justice movement that seem to be very, and rightfully so, based on revenge, and because there's so much anger at what has been done that was so obviously wrong. And it's really concerning and I'm absolutely compassionate for, even knowing I've sat in on quite a few reconciliation, ceremonies and heard the stories of people who've gone through the residential schools, and it's unbelievable what these people have gone through. I really appreciate your, the energy that you bring to it, which is one of moving forward and true reconciliation
and holding space.
Yeah. And so I guess I want kind of putting it back to you, is that something that you see a lot, kind of that balancing point between reconciliation and revenge? Do you see that in your work as an activist trying to engage other people, and what's that like for you, and how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I'm trying to react out of anger less. And instead, to shortly summarize that, it's like I've learned in life, reacting in anger isn't always the best. And so through that lesson, I've chosen to act out of my love for the future. And so I try to base my actions on how I can best benefit my child and myself. And so, yeah, and just trying to shift perspectives, because it's a vibration. And if you want to, the anger has its purpose, but it's a purpose to activate. And how can we transform it through other forms of expression?
Yeah. Was there, excuse me, I know for me, I also had to go through that transition of realizing that anger was a good spark, but it was a bad fuel because it burns you out too. But I'm curious, was there like a moment of epiphany for you that you would feel comfortable sharing, or was it, part of the earth activist training, or?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is kind of through those trainings. I kind of, like, once I had my child, I didn't really feel like I was trying to reestablish myself in community, because I believe it takes a village to raise a child. I don't think that it falls on the parent's sole responsibility to be the source of nourishment and guidance for these spirits. And so like I said, I took, I think, 6 PDCs with earth activists, and also like 2 or 3 other programmings. And so those also included social permaculture, permaculture teachers training, and now the Sacred Earth apprenticeship and the regenerative land management. So it's like the networks that I've built through these programmings have helped me feel established, because I see like, oh wait, I'm not this sole island of work of activation in this field. And I feel more supported, because oftentimes I stand out in like the white world and the reservation. I'm like white passing, so I feel like I don't fit in a lot of places, but the earth activist community, I've always felt accepted. And I've also loved the fact that we're putting earth first as often as we can, and trying to mimic those things that are already happening. I always joke that I'm like, why did I take a 4-year degree plan for environmental science when I could have just taken a 2-week PDC and learned basically the same thing without 4 chemistry classes that I don't remember all of? So I think that getting youth activated in permaculture early is great. My kid is only 4 and can teach like plant biology, soil ecology, composting systems, natural building, like already. I mean, not perfectly, but it's really a beautiful thing. And a lot of people are impressed at that, but it's because I bring my child everywhere, to every course I've taken, and I'm surprised they haven't popped in yet. So it's been really great.
Designer, you're now a recliner. So long and thanks for the yield, and your tools left behind.